What's up YouTube, welcome back to Celio's Network. Today I'm looking at a Magcargo-GX MIL list from Oceania International Championships 2020. This list was piloted by Soma Arai, I hope I got the name somewhat correctly, a Japanese player that placed 10th at Oceania International Championships, and I haven't seen a lot of talk about this list, and it's got a few special things going on about it. I did a deck profile or kind of a deck analysis on the Magcargo MIL archetype a couple weeks back before Sword and Shield was legal, and it kind of got overshadowed by all the Cinccino MIL hype, but I do think Magcargo MIL or Magcargo Stall, whatever you want to call this, I think this deck does have a lot of merit and a ton of potential. It did get 10th at OCIC, like I mentioned, and that's the list we're going to be taking a look at today. But before we do that, shout out to PotownStore.com, my sponsor, and also the best place you can get PTCGO codes. You can use code Celio for 5% off over there, and also shout out to FlipsideGaming.com, where I write free articles, and you can use code Celio for 10% off of your next order, $10 or more. So let's look at this Magcargo MIL list, 10th place from OCIC, Soma Arai. Let's start with the basics of the deck. You might see some of the things that I'm going to mention that are a little different, but we've got a 2-2-1 line of Magcargo-GX, so 2 of the Slugma, of course, with Magma Ring, 10 damage, and the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. So the other one has 80 HP, but the Magma Ring is a fairly good attack that might be able to help you in some situations, so I do think this one's the optimal one. Then 2 Magcargo with Smooth Over. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a card, shuffle your deck, then put that card on top of it. This pairs very well with the new Oranguru, which we will get to. Also pairs well with the new Zacian V, which we'll get to. So Smooth Over is a very awesome ability to allow you to essentially search your deck for any card, because you have cards that will allow you to just draw that top deck. And then we've got 1 Magcargo GX with the Burning Magma GX. The Crushing Charge and the Lava Flow don't matter, since we will not ever be using it in this deck. But the Burning Magma GX is actually very important. For Fire Energy, discard the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. And paired with Bellelba Brycen-Man and just stalling your opponent out, that's a really good GX attack. And it's in both of the MIL archetypes in Standard at the moment. So like I said, the Oranguru, there's 4 Oranguru in here. 2 of them are the Primate Wisdom one that's from the new set Sword and Shield. Once during your turn, you may switch a card from your hand with the top card of your deck. So this is where I was talking about Smooth Over has synergy with other cards. You can smooth over a card to the top of your deck, then Primate Wisdom a card from your hand, and switch it with the top deck that you just set with the Magcargo. And there you go, you just drew the card that you searched out with Magcargo. And this is a good card for if maybe you're about to play Bellelba Brycen-Man, you have a card in your hand you don't mind milling, and so you put that on top so you don't mill something that was on top that might have been a card you needed. So Primate Wisdom is a really good ability that's seen play in a lot of decks, not just Magcargo decks, but it has obvious synergy there. And then also 2 Resource Management, which are very important since we're using Bellelba and Brycen-Man that mills both the opponent's deck and our own deck. We're going to be needing to put cards back into our deck so we don't deck out, and so we have resources to play out our strategies. So Resource Management is a very important attack. 2 of each Oranguru. It's a really powerful Pokemon no matter which card it is. Mareep Fluffy Pillow ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may leave your opponent's active Pokemon asleep. So we'll be stalling our opponents a bit by trying to leave them asleep, and then they can't attack that turn. That's a turn that they don't knock out one of our Pokemon or knock out one of our Lillie's Pokédolls if they stayed asleep and couldn't get out of the sleep. We do have a Zacian V with Intrepid Sword. I'm sorry, 3 Zacian Vs with Intrepid Sword. We will not be using Brave Blade ever with this card. in this deck. It's all for the draw power of Intrepid Sword. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck and attach any number of metal energy cards you find there to this Pokemon. Put the other cards into your hand. If you use this ability, your turn ends. We'll never be attaching metal energy because we don't play metal energy in this deck. So this Intrepid Sword ability basically just reads, draw 3 cards, end your turn, and we're just fine with that when we need to get some more cards to get going, get set up, find the cards we need to do our combos. We have a Mewtwo and Mew-GX tag team for its perfection ability, so we can copy a Magcargo-GX or an Aerodactyl-GX from the discard pile. So yes, now we'll get to Aerodactyl-GX, definitely the spicy card of this list, and it's kind of ingenious why it's in here. So Wild Dive does 50 damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So that is the attack we're looking at here. How exactly does that help us in a stall/mill deck? Our entire goal is to mill the opponent to a 0-card deck so they can't draw a card and they lose. We don't want to take prize cards. We don't really have enough energy in our deck to take prize cards, 6 prize cards to win the game. So Wild Dive GX is actually really ingenious, and I'll explain why. So a combination to beat these mill decks in standard is to use Stinger GX, which I will search up real quick. To copy Stinger GX in a Mew deck, so this goes for Mew Malamar and Mew Welder. A counter to our stall mill deck is for the opponent to use Stinger GX, putting us both at 3 prizes, because we would never take prizes on our own. And then they can use Blacephalon, Fireworks Bomb for 12 damage counters every turn, Psychic and Colorless. If your opponent has exactly 3 prize cards remaining, put 12 damage counters on them instead. So they have to set us to 3 prizes because we won't do it ourselves because we're not taking prizes. So a common counter to the mill and stall decks is the Mewtwo and Mew copy Stinger, and then they go Baby Blacephalon, spread damage everywhere, take multiple knockouts in 1 turn, and they only need to take 3 because of Stinger GX. So if we copy Wild Dive GX for 1 fighting energy using our Mewtwo and Mew-GX, which is Psychic type, we will hit our opponent's Mewtwo and Mew-GX for weakness, and this does 50 damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Stinger GX costs 3 energy to use. We will do 300 damage, knocking out their Mewtwo and Mew-GX, taking all 3 prizes since they just used Stinger GX, and will win the game. So that is why Aerodactyl-GX is in here. It might have taken a little while to explain it, but I just wanted to make sure I covered all the details for anyone who was completely out of the loop on Aerodactyl-GX. That's where we're at with this card, and this list got 10th place, so I do think this idea has a lot of merit, and I do know other stall decks, other Magcargo or Shinchino stall decks were playing Aerodactyl-GX, but I believe this is the only list that was made public on Limitless. And then other Pokemon, we have the Wobbuffet. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, Prism Star Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's can't attack and have no abilities. So your opponent can't evolve their Dittos. They can't use Victini Prism, which is huge. They can't use Tapu Koko Prism to accelerate energy and maybe outspeed you. So Wobbuffet's really good, namely to stop the Victini Prism from attacking. But it's also good at stopping the other ones I named, the Ditto Prism and the Tapu Koko Prism. And then Mew, Bench Barrier, prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon by your opponent's attacks. This can get around our dolls. It can, Tag Bolt can be used. So we want to stop that bench damage that can get around our dolls and use Tag Bolt to knock out multiple Pokemon at once. So Mew is definitely a good tech to have around in the standard format, although I've been seeing it omitted in varying archetypes. So as for the trainers, we have a lot of them. I'll cover the Pokédoll first, since that's kind of like a pseudo Pokemon. This is played as if it were a 30 HP colorless Pokemon, but it doesn't reward your opponent a prize card when they knock it out. And you can just put this on the bottom of your deck if it's your active Pokemon at any time. So it essentially, you can just retreat it for free if you want to think about it like that. You can just put it to the bottom of the deck and then use your Mareep lay down another doll, retreat your Mareep into the doll, and just keep on going with your game plan. So Lillie's Poké Doll is very good for stall and mill archetypes because it can force your opponent to take a turn where they knock something out and they don't even get a prize card for it, which just stalls out the game longer, and that's exactly what you want. As for Pokemon Search, this deck has 4 Quick Ball, discard a card, get a basic Pokemon, 2 Great Ball, look at the top 7 cards of your deck and get a Pokemon, and 2 Pokemon Communication, put a Pokemon back to get a Pokemon. You can also consider Tag Call kind of a Pokemon Search, I guess, but it can really only get us Mewtwo and Mew-GX, so it's not that important, the Tag Call for Pokemon in this deck. The Tag Call is really here to get us our Bellelba Brycen-Man, which is a main card of the deck. Discard 3 cards from the top of each player's deck. The secondary effect, you can discard 3 cards to make both players go down to 3 benched Pokemon. That's not commonly used, but it can be used sometimes. The main use of the card is to discard the top 3 cards from each player's deck. And Tag Call can also get a Cynthia Caitlin, which puts a supporter card from our discard pile into our hand, and you can additionally discard a card to draw 3 cards. Some other trainers we've got going on, we have 2 Ordinary Rod and 3 Pal Pad, so a lot of recycling in this deck in addition to the resource management. If we resource manage Pal Pads and we resource manage Ordinary Rods, we're getting back more energy, or more cards. So resource manage gets back 3 cards, but if those 3 cards were all Pal Pads, we can turn those 3 cards into 6 cards. So we can fill our deck up even more. Maybe we're playing against something that has a counter to mill and they can mill us, and we want to be weary of that. So resource managing the Pal Pads and the Ordinary Rods is a common strategy because you get more value out of your resource management. There are 1 Reset Stamp to disrupt our opponent's hand, 1 Switch. There are 3 Slumbering Forests. If a Pokemon is asleep, its owner flips 2 coins instead of 1 for that special condition between turns. If either of them is tails, that Pokemon is still asleep, which comes into the Mareep strategy. So maybe you thought just the Pokemon staying asleep, okay, they can just flip a coin, and if heads are awake, Mareep is useless now, but now they have to flip 2 coins that are both heads in a row to wake up because of Slumbering Forest. Then we've got 1 Faba for getting rid of tools and special energies, maybe a Chaotic Swell if we needed to get rid of 1 to get out our Slumbering Forest. 2 Lieutenant Surge's strategies, which are also very, very important to the deck because it allows us to play 2 Bellelba and Brycen-Man in 1 turn, milling 6 cards, going for our strategy of milling 11 cards in 1 turn, going Lieutenant Surge strategy, double Bellelba, and then burning Magma GX to discard an additional 5. And also Professor's Research to just vanilla discard our hand, draw 7. Drawing cards is good. It's better to have more options than less, so you want to see more cards. Professor's Research helps you do that. 3 Air Balloon in addition to the 1 Switch, so you have plenty of options to retreat, and Air Balloon is good to put on Mareep because even if your opponent has an Absol, you still have free retreat with Mareep with the Air Balloon. And then for energy, just 2 fire and 1 fighting. So it is kind of risky, just the 1 fighting energy if you're going for that wild dive strategy. But if you're going for that wild dive strategy, that means they've also Stinger GX'd you. So that's 3 prize cards out of 6 instead that you have to hope that the energy isn't, but then they also shuffle it in. So maybe you have the fighting energy in your hand. There's a lot of variance there, but I think 1 fighting energy is probably fine, but this was played by a Japanese player, and Japanese players are known to sometimes play riskier lists or lists that are more high roll. I think it's just part of how those players build decks and maybe even part of their culture. So maybe adapting this list to your play style or the amount of risk you'd like to take would change a couple cards. But like I said, this list got 10th at OCIC, and I haven't been seeing a lot of people talk about it, and I definitely think it's worth talking about, especially this Aerodactyl-GX, which the Wild Dive GX to counter the Stinger Baby Blacephalon. I love it. It's one of the coolest techs I've seen in Standard recently, so I do hope you guys have enjoyed this deck profile on Magcargo Mill. Even if you're not going to play it yourself, now you know how to play against it maybe, or at least a little better, and you might know a few of the tricks up of Magcargo Mill players' sleeves. So if you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out PotonStore.com and FlipsideGaming.com, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.